What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another 60 feet 6 inches, your fantasy baseball home over at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You can follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me today from across the pond, it's Ben Rolfe. What's up, Ben?
Not much, Kyle. An interesting weekend here. A bit wet, a bit windy, but no football, so I'm using it to catch up on my baseball. Watched a bit of the Pro Bowl skills show, which is good fun. I like that. I should just say for anyone listening, if you hear a baby crying in the background, my daughter's running a little bit of a temperature at the moment, and she did just interrupt our previous attempt to record by screaming the house down. So I apologise in advance if we have a brief interlude because of a baby screaming.
Yeah, we'll just push through it. You know how we do here. I think like for a lot of the All-Star stuff or Pro Bowl or whatever, it seems like the stuff kind of leading up to the actual game is the most interesting. They kind of do some unique stuff. Sometimes it loses its luster, but like you said, we're here to talk baseball. And Ben, we got not only today are we going to talk some first base, talk about our top guys at the position, but we're also we got a little news, we got a little hot stove action. It's interesting. Some of these names keep lingering. Lorenzo Cain found a home, those Milwaukee Brewers, and not too long after, they made a little move and got Christian Yelich to supplant probably Domingo Santana, but let's get into it. So Christian Yelich, Lorenzo Cain, they're both Milwaukee Brewers. I guess what was your instant reaction when you saw these bevy of moves?
Okay, so first of all, I'll just say if you want to go more into detail about what I'm going to say now, I did write an article on Fake Pigskin. If you just go to Fake Pigskin MLB section, it's right there. I outline the reasons why I'm saying what I'm about to say, but the essence of it is I think it's a great move from the Brewers in realistic terms. They've got a lot of power in that lineup, but they've not got a lot of on base. And Yelich and Cain give them that. They can be their 1 and 2, set the table for the Brawns, Shaws, even the Santanas or the Tames, depending on who's in the lineup. And it's good. From a fantasy point of view, Yelich gains, I'd say 5 to 10 spots for me. I just think the improved offense is just gonna boost those numbers enough. Cain, obviously big gainer. I was starting to worry he was going to be stuck in a platoon. I now think he's going to be mostly full time, like 140 plus games. Like they might if Santana hangs around, they might sub him. Santana's a big loser. He drops pretty much out of draftable in a standard league if there's no sign of playing time. He's a great upside guy at the end of drafts, but he's nothing more than that at the moment. Think Michael Taylor of years past, like the kind of guy you might stick on your last bench spot and hope he's gonna break into the team and get enough at bats.
Now, when you say in terms of moving, you're talking about kind of what we expected if they had like Yelich, for example, if he had stayed with the Marlins and not had a lot around him. You're not talking about from like last year.
No, I'm thinking I think I ranked Yelich about 25th in my rankings, and he's now gone up into around the top 15. So he's jumped that 5 to 10 spots. He sort of jumped up from being a low end number 2, high end number 3 to being a low end number 1, high end number 2 kind of outfielder for me.
Yeah, no, I think I'm right there with you. I think both these guys is a nice park. Obviously, they'll probably hit some combination of 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 5, depending on how Craig Counsell does it. The one thing I thought was really interesting is Derek Carty tweeted this out. So the Brewers led the league last year in K rate, or K percentage, I guess. Oftentimes in DFS you go, oh, the Brewers, let's attack them. Let's use lower level starter. By adding Lorenzo Cain and Christian Yelich, they went from the worst team in K percentage to the middle of the pack. So
yeah,
that's impressive. That's going to be good news for Ryan Braun. That's going to be good news for the rest of the lineup. That's going to be bad news for more of those strikeout heavy pitchers that are going to be attacking the Brewers. Now, I guess the two fallouts here is you mentioned Domingo Santana, who as of right now looks like he has basically no job. It sounds like, from all intents and purposes, they're going to be. The plan is to move him. They just got to find the best price. So where he lands will be interesting. I know we talked in free agency about some teams that could use some corner outfield help. Maybe he does switch over to the American League and then get some potential at bats at DH, which I think could be really interesting. And then the other move, or I guess fallout of this trade, is Lewis Brinson. You think he goes to Miami? gets a shot to play every day or most days, and maybe even hit near the top of the order?
Yeah, I think he's going to get to play most days, at least initially, unless he proves otherwise. Miami got a nice haul because
Yeah.
the Harrison kid, he's a decent player as well and will be in the future. He's going to be one more for dynasty leagues, but
Mm-hmm.
as someone who's got Brinson as a keeper going in, like as a rookie keeper going in, I'm quite excited just to see what he's going to do. I'm a bit worried that he last year he seemed to be heavily going for the home run ball, and I'm hoping it was just a park thing that he was desperate to clear the fences, and that maybe now that he's in a park where it's not so easy to clear the fence. I know Giancarlo Stanton can do it, but you get my point. It's not an easy home run park, and I'm hoping what that might just mean is Brinson dials it back, puts balls in play, then we see speed element come in. He'll still hit a few home runs, especially on the road. And I'm just hoping that Brinson can be a solid contributor. I think they've initially got him projected about fifth in that lineup. I think if he bats well, he puts the ball in play, he could move up into those 1-2 spots, especially if Real Muto moves. If JT Real Muto goes, I think Brinson's the perfect guy, at least initially, to fill that one spot with the potential to then drop back into those 3-4 holes if he does show the power.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think he's gonna be a guy. I'm curious to see kind of how ADP shakes out over the next few months, but he could be a guy that at the end of your draft you just take a shot on. If it looks like he's gonna be doing stuff, then maybe you keep him, and if he doesn't look like he's playing very well or at all, then you just kind of send him to waiver wire and pick up that whoever the hot free agent is.
Which is how we felt about him last year to an extent.
Yeah,
That was
true.
kind of the same advice last year, and he just had a write-off year last year, and a lot of these guys do. He's been brought up in two very power-heavy franchises in the Rangers and the Brewers. They both focus a lot, their parks do, on power. So he's been trained, I think, to hit the home run ball. And I'm wondering now if Miami guys are just going to get hold of him and just try and talk to him more about on base. Martin Prado is the perfect kind of role model for him to just bring a few more balls into play, but still retain some of that power. So
Yeah.
I'm really interested. I really am going to look at Lewis Brinson this year. Like I say, I've got him in a holdover as a rookie, and this move immediately made me smile because I don't have any Yelich shares, but I do have Brinson. I think that's good.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. The other name that I'm kind of keeping an eye on is Brett Phillips. He's a highly touted prospect that the Brewers could be moving for starting pitching. They kind of have some salary issues where they can't really take on a ton. But he does have a lot of clout, and someone like Chris Archer could make sense. And maybe if Brett Phillips ends up getting an everyday job, he could be a guy that I'm kind of interested in as well. But as I mentioned, we are here to talk some first base. We're going to be going through the positional previews each and every week. We're starting obviously with first today. We'll work our way around the infield, head to the outfield. We'll kind of break them up into more consumable pods, and kind of make it easy for you guys to check out. So at Notorious KRO, at Ben Rolfe 15, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's any names you want specifically discussed. But Ben, let's jump into it. I guess in terms of first base, do you like safety? Do you like upside? Do you when you're drafting, do you have a specific target in mind, or in general, or do you just kind of see how the draft board falls to you, and if it's somebody that's a little more risky but you like where you're getting them, then you're fine pulling the trigger there?
At the moment, it's a kind of see where the draft falls in those first couple of rounds. ADP data at the moment is a little bit ropey at this time of the year. So yeah. I've had a look. I've done a couple of mock drafts, and I've generally found that I just look for what I perceive to be good value. When those guys fall to me, it might be that, I don't know, Votto's going in the middle of the second round, or Freeman in the middle of that sort of range. That's a nice value for them. Rizzo at the end of that round, Bellinger, and then Abreu into the next round. That's kind of how I'm approaching it at the moment, at the position. But that will develop as ADP becomes clear. If it becomes clear to me that, let's say, I am high on, let's say, Will Myers, for example, compared to the ADP, then what I will do is I will target Will Myers around earlier than his ADP if that's how I think it's best to do it. And that's kind of how I know there's a lot of debate on other sites about how people should do their rankings. I've heard a bit of it on podcasts about the fact that some people bake ADP into their rankings, and I'm one of those people. So say for example, if I see that Will Myers is going a long way behind somebody, say if I had him ranked ahead of Encarnacion, but I know I can get Myers later, I might just move Myers below Encarnacion, even if I feel like he can't, he'll be better, just because I don't want people to look at rankings and just think, oh, I must draft
Yeah.
Myers now because he's better than Encarnacion. If Encarnacion is is going 3 rounds earlier than Myers, but you think Myers is going to be better, wait 2 rounds and get Myers. But just take Myers what you perceive to be a round early. That's kind of how I'm going to play the position. That's how I play most positions, and it makes for an interesting thing because I can be in 4 or 5 leagues, and I'm always got slightly different teams then because I'm not stuck to one strategy, and I like that.
Yeah, I think context is key too. I think the point that you made about, don't just look at rankings and just grab. Oh, I need first base. Who's the top guy? Okay, grab him. Know where they're coming off the board. Know when you need to grab them. Know when it's good value. Ben may have 3 guys, the thing I appreciate with his rankings is he tiered them out for you. So you can look. Okay, I'm in this tier now. The top 2 tiers are gone. I got tier 3. I got 5 names I can target. I can keep an eye. Okay, this guy gone. This guy is gone. Okay, now there's 3 names. By the time it comes back to me, none of these guys are here. Do I need to grab one of them? How close are they with tier 4? Kind of do that in your mind, so when you're doing your draft, you're not like, oh, well, I have to grab Encarnacion because he's the last guy, even though I like Will Myers just as much or maybe even more, and I can wait 2 more rounds and grab him. But at the same time, if Encarnacion falls because people think he's old or people have concerns about him, then grab him and find that value. So I think that's very important. But and then I guess my other question for you, Ben, is are you at first base? Are you trying to get one of the elite guys, one of your top maybe 5, 6, 7 guys, or are you comfortable kind of waiting for value to appear and jumping then?
See, that's a difficult question because it does depend how it depends where you are in the draft. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not reaching for Votto and Freeman at the start of the second round necessarily if I think there's better value there.
Mm-hmm.
So if one of those guys do present themselves in the second round, I'm really happy to have that elite guy at lockdown first base. I'm very happy, but I also quite like the idea of just doubling up on guys, getting pairing like a bell and a bird in the middle of the rounds and just riding out and seeing what happens. And the danger there is that you can leave yourself behind the 8 ball, but first base isn't what first base used to be. First base
Mm-hmm.
used to be the place you got your power or you were stuffed. It's
Yeah.
not like that anymore. There's power all over the majors. You don't necessarily need that 30, 40 home run. Like, you don't need the 40, 50 home run potential.
Yeah.
What you need is a guy that's going to get you 20 plus home runs, back it up with some solid average, and go from there. The one guy I will target is if I'm in the right spot in the draft, is I will target Goldschmidt around pick 4, 5, like
Yeah.
100%. I can lock in that if he is there on those picks, I'm going to take him because what he gives you is so different to any first baseman because he gives you that power, he gives you average, he gives you runs, he gives you RBI, but he also gives you steals. And a true 5 category player like that is rare.
Yeah, no, he's basically the Gronk of first base.
Yeah.
I think he's head and shoulders above, and I'm kind of with you. It's Goldschmidt, and then I'm comfortable kind of grabbing anybody in the next. Like I'd like to get one of my top 8 or 9, but I'm also under the impression that okay, if there's better value, if there's players that I'd rather have, if there's other things I need, pitching, I'll grab that, and I'm comfortable kind of cobbling together a combination of first base and middle infield. And like you mentioned, power isn't, it's so plentiful. Like even Joey Gallo last year, who was, 40 home runs, hitting like 230. Like it just, he was sitting on waiver wires because no one needed that empty power. You could find, outfield help. You could find middle infield help that can cobble together the power you need. So let's go over your rankings. As you mentioned, Paul Goldschmidt is your number 1. You go Joey Votto, Freddie Freeman, Anthony Rizzo, Jose Abreu, Cody Bellinger, Edwin Encarnacion, Will Myers, and Miguel Cabrera. We're going to cut it off at 9. Kind of the next chunk is all more guys that if you're looking for corner infield guys, if you waited on first base, and we'll do a whole podcast talking about that group and kind of giving you our favorites, giving you some if you need this, if you need that. all that good stuff. So as of your top 9, Ben, who are you who do you think has the most volatility? Who could be a guy that maybe jumps and is closer to Paul Goldschmidt than any of these other guys, but at the same time, if things kind of go off the rails, you could see them kind of not performing up to that level, and you could have some concerns about what your first base kind of looks like as your season goes along.
It's Miguel Cabrera for me.
Mm-hmm.
He is the guy that if he has one of his seasons that he can have, he is the number 2. I mean, I was bigging him up as the 4th overall pick last year. I wrote word after word about it, and unfortunately it fell apart for me. But if he is himself, there is no one better at this position other than Paul Goldschmidt, because average is king. I mean, Cabrera can hit you 40 home runs or 35 home runs and get you that average, that 300 plus average. Like, the only guy that is going to be close to him in terms of both the average and the power is Joey Votto, with Freddie Freeman a close kind of second on that. Mm-hmm. If he gives you what he can give you, he can hit 300 plus. Last year was a really bad year, but look at the 4 years preceding that: 316, 338, 313, 348. All of those or 2 of those with 40-ish home run years, and another one with 25. It's very doable for Miguel Cabrera if everything falls right. Now, there are concerns there, massive concerns, but he is the guy that if I've missed out on my top 8, I've tiered him on his own, because he is a guy that could either be the number 2 or he could be the number 30 if it all falls apart injury-wise.
Yeah, and I think to your point, like I pulled out some of his numbers. So 2 of the last 3 seasons have not been great for Cabrera. The in-between year, so not last year but the year before, he had 38 homers, 108 RBIs, hitting over 300. Like, that's the numbers you're talking about when it all comes together. But the 2 years surrounding that, 2017 and 2015, 34 homers and 136 RBI combined. As you mentioned, he hit 249 last year. At least in 2015, when his numbers kind of fell off in terms of runs and RBI, or in terms of homers and RBIs, he was still hitting 338, so that helped you a lot. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that I don't know that I'm going to be drafting. Like, the upside is there, as you mentioned, but there's so much concern between the age and that lineup and that team. I don't know. I guess if I'm not picking Cabrera, Cody Bellinger is the guy that interests me most, because I think he has the ability to challenge Paul Goldschmidt as the elite guy. I wouldn't I mean, we saw last year in 132 games, he hit 39 homers, 97 RBIs, and stole 10 bases. If he plays 160, 155 games, could he hit, 40, 45 home runs, 100 RBIs and be in that 12 to 15 steals again? I think that's absolutely the case. His average is a little lower than Goldschmidt, so maybe he doesn't quite get there. But he could definitely approach it. And at the same time, as we saw in the playoffs, things kind of fell apart. He hit 219. If he struggles out of the gate, if we've seen these prospects come up and half or 3/4 of a season look really good, and then kind of the next season they kind of fall off. Manny Machado, Carlos Correa. Do you have any concerns with Bellinger kind of falling into that mold?
I do have concerns with Bellinger, and it's the reason he ranks below Abreu for me, while generally consensus expert ranks have him above Abreu. Yeah. It comes down to average for me. I think him and Abreu, the steals is a thing, but I always fall into the pit of not having enough average, and that's where Bellinger isn't going to help me, whereas Abreu is. So that's why Bellinger slips a little bit there for me. I think he's very good, and he would be my second name after Cabrera that could be Goldschmidt. I think even if he stole 20 plus bases, the average would still make Goldschmidt more valuable by a fair distance, even if you get the extra home runs from Bellinger as well. It's very tough. It's very borderline with Bellinger, and it's risky. He's going to have a lot of name value on draft day. People are going to remember how fun it was watching that kid play, and people are going to draft him high. And I'm going to make a projection now that I'm not going to have him on any teams, just not because I'm going to avoid him, because if the value's right, I'll gamble. but I don't think the value will ever be right.
He's the guy I think I will be a little more comfortable taking a shot on, but I'm with you there. Him, Aaron Judge, even Giancarlo Stanton to a point, I think are just because of how impressive last season was, and Judge and Bellinger's came up, stepped right in, played amazing. I feel like they could be overdrafted, and maybe they're guys that I'm looking, a couple months into the season to trade for, and see if I can't get a little bit better price. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely going to be people that are going to be a lot more aggressive on these players than I will, and so it may cause me to miss out. But I'm definitely going to try and get a couple shares. I wanted to throw out my rankings really quick. Where you have 9, I kind of have 7, or guys that I think are kind of in that like top tier. Obviously Goldschmidt number 1. I went Votto, Rizzo, Abreu. I'm with you on Abreu. I think he's criminally underrated. I think this is a White Sox team that's getting better, and I think he's going to be a nice value. Freddie Freeman, Cody Bellinger, Edwin Encarnacion. That's kind of my top 7. After that, it's kind of a mishmash of depending on what you need, how much risk you are willing to take on, all that good stuff. I want to talk about Rhys Hoskins. He's a guy that made the experts top 9. So then I'll give you the experts. Where did you grab the experts ranking from?
I got it from Fantasy Pros. I tend to use that because that correlates like 19 or 20 different guys. So I always tend to go there just to see how I compare. Just see if I'm particularly high or particularly low on anyone. It's a neat little feature.
Yeah, no, I like that, and it's always good to keep an eye on, kind of depending on what site you're going on, because a lot of the people in your league will go off of the expert rankings. So if you play traditionally on ESPN or Yahoo, and then you switch over, or CBS or whatever, kind of see where the value lies, because you may find a guy that you're really high on, and even though you play on ESPN and ESPN ranks them high, CBS may not be quite as high, and you might actually be able to get some value there. But the expert rankings, Goldschmidt 1, obviously, Votto, Freeman, Rizzo, Bellinger, Abreu, Encarnacion, Will Myers, and Rhys Hoskins. So I want to talk about Rhys Hoskins because he's a guy that's interesting to me. Obviously, he didn't come up quite as early as Bellinger, but he did come up in his 50 games, had 18 homers, 48 RBI, which is really impressive. I was looking on Fangraphs this morning, and they have him projected for 35 homers and 100 RBI, hitting about 263. So he's right there with kind of what Bellinger did last season. I guess is he a guy that you feel like that's fair, or do you think that's a tad bit aggressive for a guy that we've seen at 50 games?
I feel like that is fair. It's kind of similar to what I've got. I mean, my initial spreadsheet put him at near 50 home runs because it works off the previous year's numbers, and because he was so damn good last year, his numbers are inflated. So actually, when I first looked, he ranked right up there alongside Will Myers. But I adjusted him down from those nearly 50 down to about 35. I went dead on 35. I tend to like my nice round numbers. It's average that does concern me a little bit. It's whether he can get up to those 300s that we saw at times in the minors. I don't think so. I just don't think his approach is going to allow for it. And I think playing outfield more this year will put more stress on his body. I'm a little bit worried about their health. I've not gone back through his minor leagues and saw what he did in terms of the outfield, but just having a look last year, he played 3 games at left field in the minors. He played 30 in the majors. So his body he's not built for outfield. That is not where they brought him up from what I can see. Now, I might be wrong. He might have played loads at the lower stage of the minors, but he is predominantly a first baseman. And we've seen what happens when you put people out of position out there. It can cause problems with their hitting because you're not comfortable. And he's not going to get much of a chance at first base because Carlos Santana's there. And when Carlos Santana's not there, Tommy Joseph's there. So it's going to be difficult for him. That's what concerns me. The mix of the fact that We've seen even less of him. That might play in his advantage, at least in the short term, because people will still be trying to figure him out. Whereas I think with Bellinger and Judge, people might have already got to the figuring out kind of stage. But I do worry about the playing time. I do worry about him getting to that magic 150 games, which I can see the likes of Will Myers getting to. I can see Myers getting 20 games. 155 games, and I can see all the numbers that are going to come with that for Myers.
Yeah.
I just can't see it for Hoskins.
And as you get lower like this, do you tend to, I guess, or in terms of your rankings, do you tend to lean a little more safety than potential upside?
No, but in the top 10, I do. At the bottom end of the top 10, I lean safety. If I'm picking a guy at the bottom end of the top 10, it's either got to be a guy with a track record like Cabrera, or it's got to be somebody that can do the 2020 like Myers can,
Yeah.
or someone who I just like the situation for. Justin Smoke is a guy that's right there alongside these guys who we'll probably talk about more. I like his situation. I like where he hits more than I like where Hoskins hits. I just think hitting in Toronto is a benefit over hitting in Philadelphia. Smoke's got arguably years of failure behind him, but he's got years of experience. Pitchers have seen him aplenty, and we've seen this power breakout. That's where I'm going to put my weight. I just think that Smoke has got more chance of repeating what he did last year, whereas Hoskins, I think we could see him struggle in large chunks.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And the other name you mentioned, Will Myers, I think is an interesting name because obviously, he last 2 years 28 and 30 homers. His RBIs kind of fluctuate, but that's more a product of his team. But as you mentioned, 28 steals 2 years ago, 20 last year. I guess if you're comparing two guys, maybe one hits 30, 35 home runs with 100 RBIs, and then Will Myers is hitting 30 home runs, but maybe 80 RBIs, but that 20 stolen bases. Is that a real difference maker for you when you're looking at not only rankings but when you're drafting?
It is at that stage of the draft because at that point it comes down to what I've prioritized previously. If I've really gone after average and I've really gone after power, then I can afford to take a chance with Will Myers, who might hit 30 home runs instead of Rhys Hoskins or Miguel Cabrera's 40. I can take that chance. It's the 20 steals are so valuable. It's a huge difference in the final rankings. 20 steals, you wouldn't believe it when you consider that the Billy Hamilton with his 60 or 50 can take you from the middle of the pack to the top. You can see what Will Myers can do. If you don't really have a huge amount of steals, Will Myers can be the difference between you kind of finishing bottom 2 or 3 and being in the middle of the pack, and that's really important in the final roto standings. Points it's a little bit less, but we're talking here more roto, and that's what I like. That's why Myers is in that tier with Bellinger and Encarnacion, because he offers something different. And if that's what I need at that stage of the draft, I'm not going to take the power guys with Encarnacion and Bellinger when I can get a bit of a power speed combination in Myers. I really like what he offers.
Yeah. So my last question before we get out of here with our first base preview. I want to talk Anthony Rizzo versus Freddie Freeman. I know it's nitpicking, and I know it's easy to do. Luckily for me, I get to kind of pick your rankings because you're the one that puts them out on the site. But you're higher on Freeman than Rizzo. I would much rather take Rizzo. I guess. What is it that Freeman does that makes you go, if you're debating, okay, I need first base here in the second round, I'm looking at Freeman or Rizzo, and you pick Freeman. What's the tipping point? What's the thing that says, okay, I need Freeman here?
So if I look at my projections for these two, my projections are pretty much a wash at runs and RBI. It's very close, but Freeman is good enough where he can still get a decent amount of runs and RBI if he plays a full season. Last year, his runs and RBI numbers are depressed because he only played 117 games. He hit 28 home runs last year, Freeman, in 117 games. That's a little bit insane, actually. But runs and RBI I consider to be pretty much a wash. Home runs and steals I consider to be, again, pretty much of a wash. I mean, 7, 8-ish. Rizzo might get closer to 10. Where it comes down to is that 15-ish points in average. I can see Freeman hitting 300 plus. He's done it 2 out of the last 3 years. Rizzo, never so much. I'm just pulling up the numbers now. Rizzo's best is 290, and then other than that, it's surrounded by 270. So let's say 280 for him, 295 for Freeman. That makes a big difference to me. Maybe I'm overcorrecting this year because I did so badly in average in all of my leagues last year, but that's why. Now, put it this way: my rankings churn out a score, a roto score, I call it, and Freeman and Rizzo and Abreu all got 54 points. Now, I would have given Rizzo the bump because he's got a better lineup around him, but I give Freeman that bump because he's got that better average. He's got a little bit more upside in the power than Abreu's got. That's what just elevated Freeman over that Rizzo-Abreu pair for me.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think the lineup difference, I think, I do like the fact that 2 of the last 3 years, Rizzo's had double-digit steals. You can't really rely on him, but I think their opportunity will be there. I don't know, and hitting in Chicago with that wind, maybe gets a couple extra. Obviously, gets in Cincinnati, that's nice. And I don't know. I guess in terms of what the Braves are doing, they in front of Freeman is Inciarte and Ozzie Albies, Tyler Flowers, Nick Markakis, Acuna, who I love and has a ton of upside, but like this is a young lineup that could have issues. And when you're counting on, when you're looking at a few more runs for Freeman, or a few less runs for Freeman, few more RBI opportunities for Rizzo, that could make or break the difference. And I guess for me, I'm taking my shot on Rizzo, but I mean, I can't fault you for going Freeman, especially after the way he looked after coming out, the injury that seemed like it would hold him back. And not only did he come back a little earlier than everyone thought, but he looked really good when he did.
Yeah, he looked good. He's really developed over the last couple of years. It's fun because it's become a bit of a fantasy, not a joke, but like a running. Oh, one day he's gonna get that power, and then all of a sudden he got everything right. I think it was to do with contact lenses, and I know for a fact that makes a huge difference. But all of a sudden he went from an 18, 20 home run guy to a 30 home run guy, and that's incredible. And I think he's got enough power in his bat to do it on his own. I think part of it, Rizzo's so consistent, he bores you as a fantasy owner. You look at the stat line and go, oh, that's a Rizzo day. You don't look at it and go, oh, 4 home runs or 3 home runs in that day from Rizzo. He sort of lulls you into that, and it's nice in a way, but it's just he never seems to do anything in a year that excites you, and I think that's part of it. I think back on last year, and I honestly couldn't tell you if Rizzo played every game or was injured every game. I honestly couldn't, because I just don't recall anything that Rizzo did as being that outstanding, other than the fact that he played second base occasionally.
Yeah, he almost got second base eligibility. It's Joe Madden, man. I love him. And I guess for me, being able to pencil in Rizzo and not have concerns and know that he's going to put up good numbers allows me to be a little more aggressive at other picks and see what I can do. So. I just wanted to pick your brain on that. All right, Ben, this was a lot of fun. It was good chatting first base. Like I said, we'll be recording a second podcast after this, so make sure you check it out if you haven't. We're going to talk some guys that are beyond these top 9, top 10, guys that, could challenge for the top 10, maybe even top 5, guys that if you're digging for power, digging for average, who could you target, all that good stuff. So make sure you check that out. We are live on YouTube. We are also on iTunes, Stitcher, all those platforms. At Notorious KRO, at Ben Rolfe 15. Let us know if there's somewhere you want our pod that we're not currently at. But we'll talk to you guys next time.